I think it's in the church library. I looked, I could not find it. Somebody might have it checked out. Herbert Lockier's All the Prayers of the Bible. And that would make a tremendous devotional study for you, just to look at all the prayers of God's holy word. It is a source book that everybody ought to have, and everybody ought to lean on. As we begin our final lesson on prayer, I want to do a comparison and contrast of two great men. This is not necessarily my comparison, it's actually in the book. Two great men of God. One you know very well. You've known him probably your whole Christian existence, John Wesley. When I mention John Wesley, you always remember, hopefully you do anyway, in Christian history, he was the one who founded the Methodist Church. The Methodist denomination is in existence today because of John and Charles Wesley. Now, he lived and ministered around 1911 through 1913. But another gentleman that you may have already known about, some of you have his devotional books, but you did not necessarily know a lot about him, and that is E.M. Bounds. And there was a reason for that, because E.M. Bounds was never in the spotlight. He never gained notoriety until he died. Let me contrast these two in style and life and just let you look at them. Through 1911, for 56 years, John and Charles Wesley was a circuit rider and preacher. We sing about that, how they really existed. They rode on horseback through the United States, mostly this east of the Mississippi. And there was a more concentrated area, I don't know what it was, going from town to town, standing on the street corner. If there was a church, they went to the church. If they went to a town that did not have a church, they didn't bypass that town. They would stand and they would preach on the street corner. And at the age of 86 years old, mind you, John Wesley could still stand on the street and preach a good 30-minute sermon. Okay? Well, E.M. Bounds never had a relationship with John Wesley. They both took two different directions. E.M. Bounds' ministry lasted for about 26 years, and he was very little known. While John Wesley was going about preaching and gaining notoriety through the world, him and his brother Charles, E.M. Bounds was reading and writing, praying, reading and writing the books that we have looked at recently. Their lives, one was famous, one was not. Even in their death, today, in the city chapel, there's a word of tribute with a big stone marble statue says, "This is where John Wesley lays," the founder of the United Methodist Church, or the Methodist Church is what they called it back then. But then you go to Washington, Georgia, and there is no fitting headstone. There is only a marker that says, "Here lies E.M. Bounds." John Wesley made this statement, "The world is my parish." And that's the way he preached, and that's the way he lived. E.M. Bounds made this statement, "The world, the earth rather, is my prayer zone." Okay? John Wesley founded one of the greatest denominations ever known to man. E.M. Bounds wrote the greatest devotional books that's ever been written. If you don't have his book, you should get it. If you want to look at one, Bob Morris has one. It's a 365-day devotion, totally devoted to prayer and prayer life of the child of God. Very good book, very good book. So, with that said and done, tonight we're going to look at some of the Old Testament saints of God, and we're going to look at about 5 of them and the prayer lives that they had. We're going to start in Joshua chapter 10. Joshua chapter 10. Now, before you read Joshua chapter 10, I want to go over and read a verse to you in Romans chapter 8, verse 26. Now, think of this particular verse when you read Joshua chapter 10. Romans 8:26. Listen to this verse. "Likewise, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, helps our infirmities, for we do not know what we should pray for as we ought but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Now that was written by Paul the Apostle hundreds of years, actually 1,000 years, before this event. But this event fits that prayer. Now with that said, I want you to turn over with me to Joshua chapter 10. Now, how many of you Bible scholars all of a sudden know, well, I know what Joshua chapter 10 is all about? Anybody? Nobody? All right, it's a long chapter. I just want to read a couple of verses. There was a battle going on with the Amorites. The children of God were fighting. Let me see where I want to read. Let's read verse 11 through verse 14. Chapter 10. And it came to pass, as they fled from before Israel, and were in the going down to Beth Horon, that the Lord cast great stones from heaven upon them, and Azak, and they died. They were more which died with hailstones than they were with the children of Israel slew with sword. Then spoke Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down for a whole day. All right. Now every one of us understands that the sun don't move anyway, right? But you see, God didn't call Joshua up and said, Joshua, let me explain this to you now. You commanded for the sun to stand still, okay? But the sun ain't going no anywhere. But you see, God knew what he meant by this prayer. He wanted the daylight to stay up until the battle was over. And God permitted the daylight to stay for a whole 24 hours. The sun never went down. Now, did you know that this has actually been proven by the scientists? They know the longest day that's ever been happened 3,224 days, years ago. You can Google it. Scientists have written about it. October 17th, or 2017, they wrote about it. But did you know that in the Chronicles of the Egyptians, there was a story about the longest day when the sun actually stood still? It actually happened. And it happened as a result of prayer. Joshua, a man with like passion, said, Sun, stand still. Well, now the sun wasn't going anywhere. But God understood. And think about Romans 8:26. We don't know what we should pray for or how we should pray, but God answers our prayers just the same. He takes our groanings and he interprets them. And so Joshua's prayer was answered, but it wasn't answered in the way that God wanted to answer. Any questions on that? I think that's tremendous. It was divine wisdom. It happened immediately, and it happened completely. When he said, I want the sun to stay up till we avenge our enemies, that's exactly what God did. And the longest day happened 3,224 years ago. Google it, read it. It's scientifically accurate. Remember, they can date times all the way back to Genesis, and they found this particular day, and it really did happen.
So,
all right, that's one.
On the other side, they had the longest day. On the other side of the earth, they had to have the longest night.
Why you bring something like that up? I have no idea. Okay, hold that thought for just a minute. Okay, so you're telling me that you think God stopped the earth? That's not possible. I mean, then everything would just fly off the earth. So what did God do? How did he answer that prayer? He kept the daylight up? Maybe, I guess you're right, If it's scientifically proven that that was the longest day, the 24-hour day that just, I guess it's 24 hours. Okay. I go, anybody else want to answer that?
Well, it's God, I mean, if we don't have to fly apart, if he wants us to stand still, we stand still.
But I thought it was interesting that the Egyptians in their calendar actually recorded the same day, you know. And they had no dog in that fight, but they actually recorded exactly what happened in the land of Israel. Wasn't Israel to them, but the land of Goshen. All right, the second, Genesis 28. This is a prayer of perseverance. It's the story of a man by the name of Jacob. So look with me at Genesis 28 right quick. Genesis 28. The story starts in verse 10. Now I guess we'll read through the end of the chapter. And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. He lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night because the sun was set. And he took the stones of that place and put them for pillars and laid down his head for a place to sleep. He dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached heaven. And behold, the angels of God was ascending and descending on it. That is a beautiful picture of ministering saints of God. Now, I don't know about the ladder, but in his mind and in his dream, the angels were coming, descending and ascending, ministering to the saints of God, in this particular instance, and to Jacob. And behold, the Lord stood above him. And he spoke and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, the God of Isaac, the land where you lie. I will give thee and to thy seed. Thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and to the east, and the north and the south, and thee with the seed. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in the places where you go. And I will bring you against this land. I will not leave thee until I have done all this that I have spoken. Jacob awoke out of his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid. And he said, how dreadful is this place? There is none other but the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Jacob rose up early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had put for the pillars and set it for a pillar, poured oil upon it, and he called the name of that place Bethel. But the name of the city was called Luz at the first. And Jacob vowed a vow. Now here's the prayer. If God will be with me and will keep me in this way, and that I go, I will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace. Then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Now, there's a good message here. When Jacob got in trouble and got away from God, he went back to Bethel, the place where he first met God. That's a tremendous sermon, because when you get in trouble and stray, you come back to the place where you met God, and he's still there to minister to you. But that message here is that the vow and the prayer that Jacob made, Lord, if you will bless me, then you will be my God. And God honored the vow that he made. Okay? This is what you might call the old-fashioned mourner's bench. One place in here, as he journeyed and he wrestled with the angel, and the angel gave him a left leg. That's kind of like the old-fashioned mourner's bench. That he kept praying and he kept praying until God blessed him. So he didn't just make an empty vow. He made a vow that he was going to keep, and he was going to keep it by being a faithful prayer warrior. I wrote down something that I want to read to you concerning the modern day picture of this. You heard me talk many, many times about George Mueller. I got to find the screenshot. There it is. Okay. You heard me talk many times about George Mueller. This is the persevering prayer that he made and the vow that he made to his friend and how he kept it. In November 1844, I began to pray for the conversion of 5 individuals. I prayed every day without a single intermission, whether sick or in health, on the land, on the sea, and whatever the pressure of my engagements might be. So now he made a vow and a commitment to pray for the salvation of these 5 individuals. That was the vow that he made to God, that he was going to keep it. 18 months elapsed before the first of the 5 was converted. So he prayed a year and a half, and then one of the 5 was converted. I thank God, and I prayed for the others. 5 years elapsed, and then the second one was converted. I thank God for the second, and I prayed for the other 3. Day by day, I continued to pray for them. 6 years passed before the 3rd was converted, and I thank God for the 3, and I went on praying. I need to go back. 36 years later, he wrote, the other 2 sons of one of Mueller's friends were still not converted. He wrote this, but I hope in God and I pray on and I look for the answer. They are not converted yet, but they will be. In 1897, 52 years after he began to pray daily without interruption for these 2 men, they were finally converted, but after he had died. A commitment to God to pray for 5 individuals for their salvation just because they were friends of his friends or children of his friends. He never missed a day, and he prayed faithfully, and he saw all 5 of them. But after he had died, because he kept the prayer and the vow that he made to God. Isn't that amazing? It says Mueller understood what Luke meant when he introduced the parable Jesus told about the woman, about the disciple, and a parable to show that they should always pray and faint not. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. Now, let's go and look at the mighty intercessor. I want you to go with me to 1 Samuel chapter 1. Actually, 1 verses 10 through 17. All you Bible scholars right away know what this story is about. It's about Samuel's mama. Verse 10, and she was in bitterness and soul, and prayed to the Lord and wept sore. And she vowed a vow unto the Lord. You see how these things, all these Old Testament people, they made a vow unto God, and they kept the vow that they made. If you will indeed look on the affliction of your handmaid, and remember me, and not forget your handmaid, but will give thine handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there will no razor come upon his head. And it came to pass, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. Now Hannah, she spoke in her heart, only her lips moved, but in her voice was not heard. Eli thought she had been drunk. And Eli said unto her, how long have you been drunk? Put away your wine. Hannah said, no, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not thine handmaid for a daughter of Belial or the devil, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken here. And Eli answered and said, go in peace, the God of Israel will grant your petition as you have asked of him. So, she made a vow unto God, okay? Now, God, because of the vow that she made, God gave her the greatest prophet of the Old Testament. You cannot find any bad in the life of Samuel. Now, that cannot be said about all the prophets of God. I mean, there's all kinds of trash on the prophets and the kings, but you cannot find one single moral, ethical breakdown in the life of Samuel. Now, God answered their prayer, answered her prayer, gave her a child, he gave her to the Lord, and he became the one that restored the nation of Israel to the place where they became the greatest nation on the face of the earth under King David. Now you see, you have to look at the history here. What happened prior to Hannah and Samuel? Somebody tell me. The period of the Judges. And you know what period that was. There was a lack of spiritual leadership. People did what was right in their own eyes. The people of God continued to sin and sin and sin. But then because of a vow that the mama made, God raised up a son, and he became the spokesman for the greatest nation of the earth in that day. That's what needs to happen to America. we need to start praying. We need to pray for two things specifically. We need to pray for abortion to be eradicated from the United States of America. Did you know we're going to have a civil war? There are going to be people who are going to die because of this issue. Our leaders just do not think that it's wrong to kill children. I read a statement yesterday made by Elon Musk. Now, I don't know anything about Elon Musk except he owns a bunch of money. Okay, that's all I know about him. But listen to what this man said. Okay? Elon Musk, I have no respect for anyone who would kill a child for fame, for gain, or for politics. Powerful statement. Powerful statement. I believe that that's why God blessed Donald Trump. Regardless of whatever you think about Donald Trump and the bad that was in his life and the things that he said, Donald Trump respected the life of the unborn. And I think that's why God blessed him the way he did. We should pray specifically that God would eradicate abortion from the land of America, no matter what it takes. I believe that needs to happen. I'm not advocating bloodshed. I don't think that's the way to do it. But I do believe, friends, that this is a turning point for the nation. The second thing I think we need to pray for is that God would be restored to its proper place in society. He needs to get back into schools. Did you know that right now there has been a tremendous exodus of school teachers? They cannot find enough teachers to fill the classrooms to teach our children. Why? Because there is no discipline and there is no order and there is no moral in the classrooms of our public schools. We need to get God back in our public schools. You know, we have a program, I don't remember the name of it, Judy's involved in it, and we've been involved in it by giving things. But I think it's very, very degrading to the fact that we take stuff into the school, gifts. I mean, they know it's coming from the church, but in those little gift packets, whatever we make, we are not allowed to put a Bible verse. We're not even allowed to say, God bless you. Isn't that correct? Right? We can't say anything or any reference to God whatsoever. That needs to change. That needs to change. God needs to be put back in his proper place in America. And starting with the children's school. Okay? All right, those are the two things that I think that needs to happen. James 5:15 suggests that a vow made unto God is okay. But when you make this vow, you are supposed to keep it. Okay? So those are three. Let's move on. I want to look at another one. And when you hear about this guy, you're going to say, well, now, wait a minute. I don't know if I believe that he was really a prayer warrior. But he is in the Bible as being a praying man, and God heard his prayers. Go to Judges 16. Two prayers by this man by the name of Samson. Now we know that Samson lived a controversial life, okay? But his prayers and his victories are recorded in the Holy Word of God. So let me tell you this, okay? Don't ever think that you are inferior too much to pray to reach God. Because if God heard Samson's prayer, he'll hear yours.